What's up, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at the LG Velvet here, and I wanted to go ahead and revisit the phone because the Android 12 update came out for the LG Velvet, the Verizon version. A lot of you guys were telling me, so I was pretty interested in that. So I have the AT&T version, so of course it's gonna do like a slow rollout probably, but I do have people that have this phone. If you're on Verizon, 9 times out of 10 you've gotten the update. So let's go ahead and just revisit the phone. We know LG left the market and they did promise to update their smartphones. Now I do have some concerns about the V60 because we haven't heard anything about that. And some other LG phones, they confirmed the LG V50 oddly enough, but they didn't say anything about the V60. So yeah, so I'll make a video about that. But I want to go ahead and focus on this phone because this is, again, one of my favorite looking phones. Let me get a wipe down real quick. And I said that I believe that Samsung sort of borrowed this design with the S22 Ultra. I don't know, some of you guys are like, what? But if you guys can see like the kind of similar body shapes, and then you also have, really it's just a camera module. You can see it looks like it's kind of inspired by the LG Velvet there. So I've always thought that was interesting. This is always one of my favorite looking phones just because of how unique it looks with the sort of teardrop camera module right here. And yeah, it just looks really cool here. This mirror color is not the best for filming videos and stuff like that because you can see scratches and it picks up fingerprints after a while. I'd never use this phone with a case, but yeah, I really like the designer here. Still looks really classy. So one awesome thing about the Velvet's hardware is that you do have a headphone jack still on here. Unfortunately, there's no quad DAC on here. USB Type-C, stereo speakers, and it is IP rated. It's IP68, dust and water resistant as well too. Just in general, it's a very thin and light phone. So that's one thing that I've always really liked about this phone. Alright, so once we go ahead and look at the display here, you can see it's a very tall display, super tall display. It's a POLED display at 6.8 inches, and the screen to body ratio is around 88.6%, which is pretty good. So you got really nice bezels. There's a slight curve to the display as well. It's 1080p 395 for the PPI, so the viewing experience is pretty good on this phone. And like I said, it's got just a really tall phone. So if you're somebody with smaller hands, this is kind of a phone that you're sort of destined to two-hand forever because it's just really tall. But other than that, the display is really nice. Colors look really nice and vibrant. Icons look really crisp. Even for a 1080p panel, it's still a very high quality one. So that is one thing that I've always liked about LG's 1080p panels. Even on the V60, honestly, you put it next to a 1440p panel, it still looks really good and really sharp somehow. You do have your water drop notch up here as well too. Yeah, so the display I have no issues with. It really has grown on me. So as far as like the video watching experience, right? So most people want to know, like, how does it look when you're zoomed into the video? So this is how I usually watch videos. Half the time I don't even zoom in, but you can see it kind of zooms in like that. So it's really for like those movies that are super wide. I watched a movie like that, and yeah, once you zoom in, it's really nice to look at that movie on like a display like this. And I think Sony kind of makes displays like this as well too, where it's super tall. Theirs might actually be a little bit like taller, I think. But yeah, so I actually like the display. Now I do want to talk about the specs a little bit more. This phone is running the Snapdragon 765G and the Adreno 620. Micro SD card support is on board. The base model has 128 gigs of internal storage, and you also have 6 or 8 gigs of RAM on here. So performance wise, you get pretty good performance with the LG Velvet in general, just bouncing in-app applications, stuff like that. Gaming is also pretty good on this phone as well too. If you're a casual gamer, this easily will play anything in the Play Store, no problem. But it won't do as good of a job as something like the LG V60 with the Snapdragon 865 chip. that phone will be able to play games at the highest settings. This phone, it does not play games at the highest setting like PUBG and stuff like that. But it does a really good job at just playing games in general, again, for the casual person. So yeah, so if you want to like max games out, I would recommend going with a V60. But for general overall performance, it is very, very fast phone still. I also do want to mention that this phone does have the dual screen case capability as well too. So basically you can turn it into two phones essentially and do very true multitasking on this phone. The cases are going for I think around $100 on eBay. So you can definitely purchase one of those if you're really into multitasking. As far as the whole experience with the LG UI here, it's still fast. I've never understood why LG got such flack for their UI. I think they really cleaned it up. Like I said, very fast UI here, and I like the way everything looks and everything's set up here. If we go ahead and check out the toggles here, we do have screen recording, and screen sharing actually works really well, so you can beam it to a TV wirelessly. The LG 3D sound engine comes in handy as well too. This phone does have NFC on it as well. So I don't have an issue with the skin on this phone at all, really. It's on here. Very good sounding speakers on here, very loud, very good quality from this top speaker as well too. I do think the overall speaker quality sounds better with the LG sound engine off, in my opinion. When you put headphones in and you kind of equalize it, I think it sounds better with headphones in. But honestly, if you just play around with the equalizer, you can get it to sound how you want. But the speakers are great on here, and also the vibration motor is pretty good on here. You can feel the phone vibrating pretty well, so you won't miss notifications and stuff like that. Alright, so we need to talk about the fingerprint scanner. So the fingerprint scanner is fine on here. I don't have an issue with it. It works really well. Like I said, it's not one of those like Samsung ones where you can just kind of tap it and it'll open. You kind of have to apply just a little bit of pressure. It's basically like the V60, but it does work no problem. Unfortunately, this phone does not have any face unlock, which is kind of sad because I usually always prefer like a two methods. But yeah, it is what it is. So as far as like the specs and everything is really specced out on this phone. And it's just a really solid experience, especially for the price that you can get this phone at. You can honestly get this phone for around $250. It's really cheap. I'll have the link down below. And yeah, I just absolutely love the experience that this phone gives me. So we need to talk about the image quality. So are the cameras good? And I think the cameras are pretty good, especially for this price point. So it has a 48 megapixel standard, and then you also have an 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 5 megapixel depth sensor. It shoots in 4K 30, and then you also have a 16 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080p 30. Image quality is pretty good on this phone. I don't have any issues with it, and honestly, I never had people complain about the image quality on this phone. I think it is overall pretty solid. Yes, if you take it out of, good lighting, it can get a little bit soft, but in general, the image quality is pretty good on here. So I was really happy with that. The ultra wide is also pretty close to the main lens as well in terms of color. Maybe not in terms of detail, but it is pretty good ultra wide. So the depth sensor on here is fine. You can get a pretty decent portrait shot on here. I wish it had 4K 60, but it is what it is. And I wish the front camera was 4K 60 as well too. But other than that, I think you're getting a pretty good camera experience on this phone, especially considering the price. All right, so lastly, dang. All right. Lastly, we need to talk about the battery life. And the battery life is pretty good on here. This phone will easily get over 6 hours of screen on time. So this phone does have a 4300 milliamp battery. It charges at 25 watts, so it does charge somewhat decently fast. And then you also have wireless charging on this phone as well. And overall, the battery life experience is pretty good on this phone. And I actually gave this phone to my mother, and she actually really likes this phone over her iPhone 13, surprisingly. So I might bring her on to just let us know, because she actually really loves this phone. I actually don't use this phone as much now because I actually gave it to her to use. So she really likes to do like the content creation on here with like TikTok and with her stuff that she does. So she takes a lot of pictures, and she really likes the whole Android experience in general, which I was really surprised with because I actually gave her that iPhone. So she really likes this phone. So she's always asking about it as soon as I take it. But yeah, so this is a really good phone. I mean, I really, really like this device. It's only going to get cheaper. I'm super shocked that this got Android 12 first. So that was pretty interesting. So yeah, so be sure to let me know what do you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.